The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent. Chapter 15. Stitching Together the Pieces. Evie stood on the dock behind her new house, the gentle lapping of the river against the wooden posts offering a rare moment of peace. The morning sun reflected on the water in dappled patches, and the faint scent of damp earth and blooming flowers wafted through the air. Spinks was lounging on a nearby patch of grass, batting lazily at a butterfly, his contented purrs blending with the sound of chirping birds. "This is so you," Annie said, her voice filled with awe as she stepped onto the dock with 2 steaming mugs of tea. "Seriously, Evie, if I could dream up the perfect place for you, this would be it. A house by a river? A greenhouse? An actual root cellar? It's like something out of one of those books you used to devour in high school." Evie laughed softly and accepted the tea, her gaze lingering on the water. "It does feel weirdly right, like I've been waiting for this place without even knowing it." Annie's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Okay, show me this famous greenhouse. I have to see all these exotic plants." Evie hesitated but nodded, leading Annie toward the small greenhouse tucked behind the house. Its frame was a little weathered, but the glass panels were clean and gleaming, reflecting the sunlight like tiny mirrors. Inside, rows of pots and planters sat neatly arranged on tiered wooden shelves, and a faint, earthy smell lingered in the air. Annie stepped inside and took a deep breath. "This is amazing. It smells like growth." She paused, glancing back at Evie. "But you look like you've seen a ghost." "It's just..." Evie's voice trailed off, her gaze falling on a row of empty clay pots in the corner. "I had this dream a few nights ago. I was in here, frantically searching for something. But I had no idea what. It felt so real." Annie tilted her head, her tone gentle but probing. "Do you think it means something? You've been going through a lot. New town, new house, new everything. Maybe your brain is working overtime?" "Maybe," Evie said with a shrug, but her eyes lingered on the greenhouse's far corner as if it might hold an answer she couldn't quite reach. Annie nudged her playfully. "Come on, let's not overthink it. Show me the rest of this place before I start planning ways to move in with you." Evie chuckled, leading Annie back toward the house. She pointed out the quirky decorations Lizzie had left behind. The mismatched furniture, the collection of glass bottles on the windowsills that caught the light like tiny prisms, and the butter-yellow kitchen that seemed perpetually bathed in warmth. After the tour, they sat at the small kitchen table, sipping more tea while Spinks curled up in Annie's lap. The conversation naturally drifted toward Lizzie, with Annie asking questions about her life. "So," Annie said, stroking Spinks absently, "you've told me about how Lizzie owned the shop and how much the people in town loved her, but how did she die? Was it sudden?" Evie hesitated, her fingers tightening around her mug. "It was a heart attack, or at least that's what everyone says. She was 72. But from everything Marcellus told me, she was more active than most people half her age." She paused, her brow furrowing. "And, well, I can't shake this feeling that maybe there's more to it. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me." Annie's expression grew serious. "If you feel like something's off, you should trust your gut. Ask Marcellus where she was when it happened. Maybe that'll help piece things together. And if you need to dig deeper, I'm here for you. No matter what." Evie smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Annie. I'm glad you're here." Later that morning, they made their way to the shop, chatting about plans for the grand reopening. As they approached, they spotted Marcellus standing on the sidewalk with a brightly colored flyer in his hand, his grin as wide as the horizon. "Ladies," he called out, waving them over. "Look what Frida and the team have been up to." He handed Evie the flyer, which featured cheerful illustrations of apples, flowers, and books. Bold lettering announced, "Grand reopening of Silver Sage Naturals and Mini Festival. Join us for games, prizes, and more." Evie's heart swelled at the sight. "Wow, this is amazing, Marcellus. Thank you." He waved a dismissive hand. "It was nothing. The town's excited, and everyone's pitching in to make this a success. Frida and I will be here to help the whole day, so don't worry. We've got your back." As they stepped inside the shop, the warm herbal scent of Lizzie's creations greeted them. Annie immediately started brainstorming ideas for the apple fishing game, pulling up songs for her witchy playlist, while Marcellus explained which businesses had agreed to set up vendor stalls outside. "Don't worry," he said with a wink. "You're going to knock this out of the park." By mid-afternoon, the shop was coming together, and Annie, enchanted by the town, decided to explore while Evie stayed behind to tidy up. As she worked, she spoke casually to James, even though he hadn't appeared. "Well, James," she said, stacking jars of lotion on a shelf, "you were right. This town really does have something special, and I think Lizzie would have been thrilled to see how much everyone's helping with the reopening." Spinks darted across the floor, chasing an invisible playmate, and Evie laughed softly. "You know, I've been thinking about her a lot lately, wishing I'd known her better. I never knew my dad either. He died when I was a baby, and my mom never talked about him. It's like there's this whole part of my life that's just blank." The room remained silent, but Evie felt a subtle warmth in the air, as if the shop itself was listening. As the sun began to set, Annie returned practically glowing with excitement. "This town is incredible," she gushed. "I stopped by Granny's quilt shop, met the guy who runs the hardware store. He told me the funniest story about Lizzie, and don't even get me started on the bakery. Evie, you're going to love it here." Evie smiled, her heart lighter. "I think I already do." They locked up the shop together and headed out for dinner, leaving the cozy little store to its quiet mysteries for another night.